Classes in session.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Unlearn 16 Classes in Session. You know what? I thought today I'd do a bit of a throwback. I think I've touched upon this many different ways at many different times, but it's the new year, and I feel like it's been top of mind for a lot of people, a lot of discussions I've had. Obviously, it's been in my past, and I think it's incredibly important to talk about it because I think it's at the fundamental root of everybody we are. That's a dramatic pause. And what I'm talking about is relationships, obviously. I think the motivating force of possibly everything we do is either subconsciously, which is the dangerous part, or consciously built on relationships, built on our perception of people, built on our perception of love, built on our perception of dependency and interconnectivity and all of those things. And I think we as people, we struggle with what's important. We struggle with what's vital. We struggle with how to make that part of our lives go perfectly. I think that's what we're all either overtly or covertly focused on, right? We want to find that person we're going to be with, that ride or die, that person that we love unconditionally, no matter what, no bound, like all of these, I don't know, I don't want to say delusions, but all of these ideas, these over romanticized movie ending, the music swells ideas of love. And when it doesn't work, when we think we've got it, and then it doesn't work, let's say, and yes, I'm talking to a lot of people out there who have been through a divorce, going through a divorce, or a bad breakup. You don't necessarily need to be married to understand the magnitude of what I'm going to say. But a significant, serious, interconnected relationship. And when that falls apart, I think all of us are very, very quick to point and say, they did that, or they were this person, or they were that person. I mean, my God. TikTok is filled with, he was a narcissist, she was a narcissist. I've heard that word so many times. When you just keep repeating a word, it ceases to lose all meaning. TikTok is just a word, sort of a world filled with that and filled with judging the relationship you've been in. And then don't get me wrong, there's some amazing sort of therapist focused individuals on TikTok that you can go and you can learn a little bit more about and figure out what works for you. But a lot of people talk, especially in that first, right when it's painful, right? When the breakup is painful, we point fingers and we lay blame and we say, you lied to me. We say, you said this, you said that. We lay out every horrible thing that they've done since probably, day one of your relationship. And you sort of itemize them. I should have seen it. I should have seen that. I should have seen that. We talk about red flags. We talk about all of this stuff when it comes to other people. And we do it with our friends and our family. And we all sit around like in that stage. And they're all like wound up, ready to tear down that other person that obviously possibly broke your heart, broke your worldview, broke your home, made you adjust, sometimes broke your finances and your economic stability and viability. And all this stuff happens. And we point and we point and we point. And myself included, right? Myself absolutely included. And I'm not just talking about being married. I mean, you date people and you're very quick to say, yeah, them. That's what happened in that relationship. Oh, that person was this way or that person was this way. And we very rarely, seriously, look at us. Now, some people might have, let me correct a little bit. Some people might have a tendency to always to blame themselves. And then the bad relationships keep happening, right? I don't think that individual's truly blaming themselves. I think they're taking the blame, But there's a big difference between saying I'm sorry and saying I'm sorry and meaning it because you understand what was lacking. You understand exactly what you did. You understand that your actions had that negative consequence. And I don't think people do that a lot for one very, very particular reason. I think most of us, most people lack a complete, a full, a well rounded understanding of who they are. A friend of mine, Vanessa, told me that when we get into relationships, we are often trying to, and I know this has been said before, but we are trying to subconsciously work through a relationship with our parent or that we saw operate within the confines of our parent. And until we heal that, until we figure that out, until we understand that, we will continue to duplicate our mistakes and continue to duplicate the people we are attracted to. You know, everybody always says, like, oh, you attract who you are and all of this stuff. I mean, part of that is true. Part of that is true, but it's not like this negative charged magnet. You're not walking around and idiots are just like attaching themselves to the side of your body and your head and your face and your foot. You're dragging them around because you're just this giant moron magnet. Here's what it is. It's even worse. It's even worse. You're not the magnet. You're seeking it out. Who you're attracted to, who you're fundamentally attracted to, you know, that feeling in the pit of your stomach that nobody can explain, that nobody can get rid of, that nobody can articulate quite properly, that feeling in the beginning of a relationship that draws you to that person. What I'm talking about is if you have unresolved crap, if you have a broken relationship sort of sensibility, if your child self and your love map has been skewed and you haven't dealt with it and you haven't healed it, these people aren't going to be drawn to you. You're going to be drawn to them. And you, me, are going to consistently make and remake again all of the same mistakes that were in past relationships that you still can't figure out how to heal. So when people say, you know, how do we find that relationship? You know, first of all, let me please admit that by no means am I an expert in any way, shape, or form. I am just sharing life experience, conversations, other people's experience, the things that you have gleaned since, you know, traveling around this world for as long as I have been here. And hopefully I get smarter from, you know, today onward. But I think you need to develop, the key is to develop an authentic self. And in order to develop an authentic self, you need to have all the tools to do so. You need to understand all the subconscious stuff that you have been writing off to attraction, to that's just my type, to, well, yeah, I realize that I got into this, but if communication was better with that person, if ability to like organize and you know plan was better with that person, and you keep coming up with all these externalities, but all these externalities don't change the actual common denominator, and the common denominator is you, is me, is the person in the relationship. And what do you need to heal? What do you need to figure out? Let me tell you what I needed to figure out. I think very early on, most psychologists will talk about the way that a child's love map gets designed, gets imprinted. So kids will learn from their families, from their parents, and from their immediate families, the people they spend their time with, what love is supposed to look like, how it plays out, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we get that very subconsciously, right? There's no parent sitting around going, we're imprinting upon this kid. I think parents are starting to understand it more now. But here's the funny part. Unless as an adult you've done that work and figured yourself out, you can try to control and manipulate what your kid sees, but you can't control or manipulate how they still perceive love if you haven't healed it for yourself. So there's a lot of parents who like won't want to fight in front of their kids. Sure, I think that's healthy. Listen, I think yelling and heaven forbid anything physical, all those things are negative qualities. Having said that, if you are, just because you're not fighting in front of your kid, just because you're not raising your voice, you're spelling out words, the kid gets it. The kid understands it. And more so, I'm starting to believe that it's far more important for a kid and for people in general, not just to understand that there will be conflict, because guess what? There always going to be conflict. Always. I don't care who you are. There will always be conflict. There will always be discussion. There might even be levels of fighting or arguments or all of those things. And those are important. Those are important. But you can't hide the discussion. You can't hide the fight. You can change the way you fight. That's important. So you can put that over there and decide that you're going to fight respectfully, and you're going to fight without, name calling and screaming and all of those things. But the key is to figure out and to show people around you, especially kids, how you resolve the fight. There it is. How do you resolve a fight? How do you resolve a conflict? Because then for them, love isn't avoiding it, or love isn't whispering about it, or love isn't just fighting and then waiting for it to go away and then it goes away magically one day because you never saw the back end of it. Now, I'm not saying kids need to be privy to all their adult conversations. That's not what my point is. But my point is to be aware that those kids are like animals in the sense that they just feel emotion. They don't necessarily understand your words. So if they're feeling it, they're going to feel it whether you're yelling or you're not. They're going to feel different things if you yell, but they're going to work their way through it, right? And so at that age, that's what you start to figure out. So when I was young, my parents got divorced when I was very, very young. So I didn't see a relationship between my mom and my dad. Like I saw a relationship of like they stayed friends, and my mom, they was very cordial and all of those things. I never saw them fight. That's not the point. I didn't see a love relationship between them. The way that I saw my mom love was with her family. And I joke with my mom now because I think she says sometimes that, maybe some of the things that I had to carry and work through and all of those things had to do with the divorce and my dad and whatever. And I said, I don't think that's the case. In retrospect, and here's something hysterical, I think I learned how to love, or what I thought love looked like, from the way my mom loved family. And the way my mom loves family, and by the way, she's also a nurse, right? Was unconditionally, was all in, was no boundaries, no limits, no big discussions, no consequence. And it's not like horrible things were happening in my family. It's just that my mom didn't have those lines because she always wanted to be there for whatever family needed. And to me, that was my model, because I didn't see her in a romantic relationship. I'm assuming, this is a lot of assumption, right? Because how the hell do we ever really know? I used the model of how she loved family, and to some degree, even how she nursed, to be perfectly honest, as my love map, as the way that I'm supposed to love. So when I got into relationships, as I was older and after I came out, I was all in, all in. And what that meant was people would talk about things like boundaries, and I would see them as being, if you have a boundary, then you aren't all in. If you have a limitation, then you're not loving big enough. And if I had a partner and I had a limitation, then somehow they would see that as my failing to love them big enough. And and this is has been, obviously, my number one issue. That's not about it has nothing to do with who I was with. This conversation I will spend no time talking about my exes in any significant way. I won't talk about, any of those things because those other people, those are, let's say, proof. They're proof of what I was trying to heal and did badly at it. It's about me. A good relationship is about you, where you draw the lines, what your boundaries are, what your love map looks like, the way that you set up that dynamic to be both, somewhat dependent but not codependent. You set it up to be loving but not all consuming. You set it up to be giving and compromising, but not compromising to the point in which you lose yourself, you lose your character, you lose your priorities. And for me, I stopped doing that truly for about 11 years. All I did was try to figure out how to please, was try to figure out how to not rock the boat, was try to how to love somebody past the stuff they've been through and the trauma they've been through and all of that stuff. I just got to love more. I just got to love them more. If I love them more, they will feel that. They will be energized for that. They will be lifted from it. But here's the funny part about that. And I don't know how to articulate this. If you are loving somebody with no honesty, if you are loving somebody with the zero ability to be, let's say, constructively critical, if you are loving somebody and you aren't able to sit down and have honest conversations and still sit in who you are and what you need and be able to put that on the table, you're not loving anybody. And number one, you're not loving the most important person because you're not loving yourself. When people say, like, what's the one thing I would ask, I would recommend to my former self, I'd say therapy, not to fix me. It's not about fixing. It's about understanding. No, we all need things to fix, right? We all need things to work through. We need things to heal, but that's not really fixing. It's not necessarily changing. It's just understanding. And I don't think in our world, in our culture, we spend any time doing that. We're constantly looking for the right person, external. We're constantly looking for the right relationship, external. We're constantly looking for the person with the right job and the right position and the right belief, external. When they say you shouldn't be looking, they don't finish the thought, They say you're always going to find that person when you stop looking. Well, they don't finish that thought. There's a bigger thought there. And the thought goes something like this. If you've stopped looking, the back end of that is that at some point you have become impressed enough and happy enough and aware enough about who you are and what you bring to this world and what you get from all the different amazing people you connect with that you feel whole. That's why you stop looking. Because when people are looking, they're looking to fill something. When you stop needing to fill something, that's the magic moment. It's not like you don't go to bars anymore, scouring the hemisphere or on dating apps, scouring away. It's not about meeting people. It's about figuring out, and it's hard. And it's counterintuitive to everything else we're told, but it's hard because we're constantly inundated with, go to high school, go to university, get a job, get married, have kids, we have a plan. And this plan is really quite in the way of one of the most fundamental things, which is figuring out who we are externally, internally to all of that. When do we have that time? When I was a kid, and people still talk about it, go backpacking around Europe and find yourself. I always thought that was such a crock of shit. But the sentiment is this. The sentiment isn't the backpack. The sentiment isn't like some dodgy hostel in, you know, Nice. The sentiment is take the time. Take the time. How do you carve that time? And when they say do it in Europe, they mean do it away. It's what I think, right? You know, a bunch of people in the comments saying you don't know what you're talking about. But I'm going to say this. When they say backpack around Europe, they're saying it because of a few reasons. Do it outside of your peer group. So again, you're not influenced. Do it outside of your culture that you've grown up with, that you felt comfortable in, that has become like this safe space for you. Do it outside of that. Hell, do it outside of the language you speak. Do it outside of the things you see every day that serve to reinforce past behaviors and past belief systems and past structures. The more new you can make things, the more unknowable you can step into something, the more discomfort you might feel, the more you might figure out little pieces of yourself that you never would have figured out before. And I think that's what the backpacking thing is. It's not about getting a sore back with a giant, or every time I think about backpacking across Europe, by the way, side note, I think about American Werewolf in London. Why is that? With his red jacket and his backpack and his strolling off the path. I think there might be a lesson there as well. But I think it's all incredibly important to carve that space. And you don't need to go backpacking for that, but we need to carve space, and we don't do that. We also all need to agree that everything we've done up until the point you are at has been inundated with influence. I'm not saying we're all part of like some massive brainwashing campaign. I'm not about government conspiracies and cultural. Listen, I'm just saying you grow up with a certain culture, you grow up with a certain family, you grow up with certain television shows, clothing, fads, music influences. You grow up in a certain kind of academic environment. You grow up and you go into a certain work environment, and there's expectation there, and dress codes, and time management skills, and workplace culture, and fitting in with the right peer. All of those things are getting in the way, possibly, of you figuring out you. And then one day you turn 35, you turn 40, you're in the midst of divorce, and you feel like you've never known yourself ever. And the possibility is you haven't. Not really, not completely. I also don't know if you ever completely understand yourself. But when you start with things like boundaries, and you start understanding that who I am matters, what I need matters, what I my the things I'm willing to compromise on, the things I'm not, to be able to write them down, to be able to articulate them. And here's the kicker. Are you ready for the kicker? To be able to walk away from a relationship, no matter how much you think you are in love, if those things aren't met. There it is, right? And I wasn't. God, everything was falling apart. Like, not a single thing was being met. And yet I was holding on with both hands. Why? Because I thought that's what love was. That is the opposite of love. You can never hope to be in a healthy, amazing, complete relationship if you are not healthy, amazing, and complete, which means you have to work through whatever you went through as a kid. All the subconscious stuff, put it on the table. At the beginning of a relationship, and well, I guess at the end of the relationship, you look at the beginning, you say, oh, look at all those red flags. You know what's funny? We never go, oh, what was my red flag? Oh, what were my problems? What were the things that were red flags should have been red flags in my personality, where I looked at that and went, what the hell was I doing? And if I didn't draw a boundary then, if I didn't stand up for myself then, what's broken in me that had nothing to do with the other person? Because other people are going to treat you the way you demand to be treated, period. And if they don't want to step up and treat you the way you need to be treated, then you can say, thank you, have a lovely life. I'm going this way now. But we don't do that. I think a big reason we don't do that is we hate change. Who doesn't hate change? Right? It's like and that massive kind of overhaul, especially you've been in a relationship for a long period of time, no matter how good, bad, or ugly it's become, it is, you know it. You know it. It's like you know the worst and the best of it. So there's a comfort in that. I think there's the danger for most of us. I think the danger is we get very, very comfortable in, at best, mediocrity, at worst, um, in some cases, and I've listened to people, in some cases, we are actually comfortable in the chaos, right? We are comfortable in the extremities of emotion. We've convinced ourselves that the low lows and the screaming and the fights and all of that, and then the big over the top, I love you, I can't live without you, that range is passion. That range is that insanity, that feeling, that pure anxiety driven insanity is somehow what you think love is supposed to feel like. And that's not just from that relationship, that's from before. Now you can be in a relationship that breaks things and you need to heal from because you never felt like that before, and it was a slow grind for a while, so then you got to heal that, right? And that's why a lot of us make consistently similar mistakes. Is because a lot of what I'm talking about, and I think this is the scariest or hardest part, it's not conscious. You can say, listen, you can say, when I was 6, this happened. You can say that, but can you feel it? And if you can't feel it, if you can't draw that sensation to that moment, when that sensation rears its head somewhere else that is seemingly totally disconnected from when you were 6, you never make those connections. You never figure out what you need to heal. You never figure out what you have to adjust. You sure as hell never figure out how to draw the boundary so that sensation ceases to control and drive you, right? And I'm not just talking, I guess when I talk about all this stuff, a lot of people are like, Joanne, I can't go, I can't go to therapy twice a week. 300 bucks a pop, get out of town. I'm not really worried about the in therapy thing because I think a lot of people can do a lot of work with themselves. I think there's a lot of amazing things you can access now, and you can figure out, and you can journal, and you can write down. I personally needed that help. That's just the way I work. There's no way I couldn't have done it without, like, at some point I was like therapy twice a week. I would go over to Stacy's house. When I leave Stacy's house, I'd call Amy on my way home, and I'd get home, and then I'd talk to Stacy again, or I'd call Lou, and then I'd go into work the next day and I'd sit down with those people and I talk. I had so many this amazing sort of freaking army of people that I could lean on left, right, and center. I know that's so, so, so lucky, and that I was in that position and I had those people. But there's a lot of different ways that I think that we can reach out to other people. But the key is, and I don't know when this happened. I would love to tell you I knew when this happened, but I don't. The key is when I stopped trying to figure out how to heal how to heal the hurt of that one relationship. There was a moment that I shifted from healing that hurt to trying to figure out what it was about me that I brought to that situation, and trying to identify those things and trying to figure out. And then I went to extremes, right? Because I went to an extreme where my boundaries were thick and ginormous and a little ridiculous because I hadn't tried them on before. So it was like, oh, I need boundaries. I'm going to try all 317 I can think of. Boom, 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 right in front of me, right? I created a moat. Now I happened to meet a woman who, I don't know if she's so incredibly intuitive, if she's for all of her amazing qualities, could see them and go, what is that? Okay, and she's gonna let me work through that. But she's not gonna let me work through it without acknowledging her boundary. Softly, seriously, calmly. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm okay with. This is what I'm okay you working over and through. This is where I'm not okay. And I never once felt at risk in that situation. I was given time to sort of slowly work through it, not say stagnant, not just live in it. I was given time to work through that. And then I was able to, once I really could look at myself, once I really shouldered what I needed to shoulder from that, and I still do it, only then did I start understanding what love was supposed to look like. Love should be peace. You can have a fight in peace. You can disagree. That's not what I'm saying. Nothing's perfect, but the idea of anxiety-ridden fireworks that you never know exactly when they're going to go off, the misconstrued notion of passion, that's not love. That's manipulation. And I think a lot of people do it without knowledge, without foresight, without understanding what they're doing or why they're doing it, just like I did, right? Most of us walk through this world doing things, being drawn to things, reacting to things, all subconsciously driven, meaning you have no idea why why I did what I did, why I didn't do that, why I overreacted here. You don't even know it's an overreaction. You just assume it's the reaction you should have because you don't question it. You're not questioning you. You're only questioning other people because it's easier. And how the hell are you supposed to question your subconscious? What are we, Carl Jung? Am I supposed to journal all of my nightmares and dreams in order to gain some sort of insight into, the flying bowling balls? I don't know. But what I do know is that unless we're trying pieces, tiny little, chipping away tiny little pieces, we're not getting better. And you're just going to keep replicating that and replicating that again. So I think that looking externally is never the answer. Also, I think this: deciding that you're perfect is never like, I'm good. I've heard people say things like, it's just who I am. It's who I am. And if you don't like me, fine. Listen, if that's where you're going to stand, what you're saying is, I have all these broken parts, but I'm just going to be okay with them. I'm never going to try to fix them. You get okay with them or get the hell out of my life. Well, that's a recipe for disaster. In no way, shape, or form am I saying we are all supposed to be perfect and whole. I'm saying if you see a piece of yourself that doesn't seem healthy, that isn't healthy by your standards, by any other outwardly objective standard, it's your job to fix it, not spill it on everybody else around you. No matter why it was broken, no matter who broke it, no matter how long it's been fractured, it is only your job to figure out how you deal with it, you heal from it, you put it back together, you recognize it, you carry it, but you know how then it affects you so you don't let it control you. That's it. When we do less than that, we devalue our relationships, we devalue ourselves, and we don't become as great a people as we're going to become. I was with a bunch of friends yesterday, and all of us knew each other in grade 9, so for like 400 years. And these are the kind of people you sit down with and you look around the room and you go, what? We've been through it. Like, we've just been through we've been through a whole lifetime, and we've kept in touch. And no matter how close you've kept in touch with those people, I don't know about you, when you sit in that room, there's an ease to it, right? An ease of it. And I can pick up the phone and call them anytime I want. And I might have missed big life things, but you know what I didn't miss? Who they are. Like that person stays constant. But the cool thing about sitting in a room with a bunch of, you know, later 40-year-old women, outside of the fact that they had to put their glasses on to read the wine bottle, um, the cool part is that you look around, and if you're lucky, if you put in the work, you look around and you see these women who have stepped into more of themselves, who feel, since grade 9, we were 13, 14 years old, who feel more confident about who they are, who have been through it, who have figured out that's the boundary I need to draw. That's what I need to accomplish. These are the people that I'm going to have in my life. These are the people that I can't. And you see this shift. And when people talk, don't you miss your 20s? No, no. Want to know why? Because I feel like when I look back at that, I'm like, well, I was not smart. And I don't just mean smart in school, obviously. I mean intelligent. I had zero emotional intelligence. If it's on a percentage of scale, I might have been running in the negative, guys. I might have been running in the negative. And it you gain that emotional intelligence when you learn what emotions are used for, how they're used against you, how they can be manipulated, how you get to take control of those thoughts and therefore control of your emotions as you gain experience through this life. And some people do it way better than me, way younger than me, way easier than me. But looking around that room, and thinking about where I am, I wouldn't want to be a day younger. I would love it if my back didn't hurt all the time. But outside of that, I wouldn't want to be a day younger, because a day younger means I get it less. I wish, and I think young people in today's world are starting to get it better than us. Oh, younger people are always smarter than us. Who am I kidding? Because they'll talk about things like mental health and what they're really talking about. Because a lot of people like to say, oh, they always have something. They always have, but no, what they're really figuring out, and I think tapping into, it's not just mental health and who has depression or anxiety or OCD and all those things. And that's there as well. It's about these young individual souls trying to figure out who they are internally without the external influences of every single other thing. And I think that's what drives a lot of adults crazy, because they're jealous. They're looking at these kids, and I think it's always been the case, because you look at kids and they dress, for the most part. They put on what they want. They dress. They listen to music you don't like. They do things differently than you. Nobody's perfect, but what they're trying to figure out is their identity. And if we would get out of their way for like 30 seconds, if we could just like move out of their way a little bit more or a little bit longer, maybe they could establish a little bit more truth, a little bit more space, a little bit more of that personal authenticity before they get into big relationships and marriages and kids and all of those things. So when they walk into it, they understand more of who themselves, and then that relationship and then that dynamic has more of a shot of being authentic, being lasting, and being real. And if it has to end, it ends in a real, healthy, aware way, because not everything needs to last forever for it to be good. Things can come to an end that are good, but that's not what I was taught. That's not the space that I was made. When I talk to my students about the things that they like that we talk about the most, you want to know the number one thing they want to be able to talk about? And as young as grade 7, they want to talk about boundaries. They want to understand what that means. They want to understand what can they draw in a situation where you're 14, 15 years old, where you don't control a lot in your life. What boundaries can you draw? How can you draw them? What's rational? What's healthy? What's too much? What's too little? How can you stand on your own 2 feet? They are desperate for that conversation. So I say we take our 47 years of wisdom, clear the road so they can actually have a better go at it. They can start from a better position. Everybody talks about the next generation doing better than us. Economically, we might have a bit of a problem with this one, but emotionally, but, politically, on the basis of diversity and equity and sort of a social justice level, no, I think this next generation is going to do exactly what we always wanted them to do. They're going to be better. And they're going to be better because we're going to give them more space to be exactly who they need to be, with respect and awareness for everybody else around them. My final thought: you want a healthy relationship? Figure out who you are, what you need, and what your boundaries have to be, and then have the strength, sometimes the audacity, to stand up for them. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Dismissed.